Ah, greetings, my friend. It's the Duke of Dreadmore, here to share a collection that will chill to the core. 3 tales of terror, each darker than night, of ghastly intruders who come for a fright. They take more than they give, their hunger unbound, and once they are through, no peace will be found.
It was about 11 years ago, in the dead of winter. I was living in a quiet rural farm community with my husband Frank. I remember the cold that day, how the chill seeped into my bones and made my old joints stiff. It was a late afternoon when it happened. My husband wasn't supposed to be home for a few hours, so I was alone in the house. I was sitting on the bed upstairs when I heard a door opening. The sound of an old hinge faintly creaked, and then came the muffled sound of footsteps, slow, tentative, silently moving on the carpet. I froze and listened. The only thing that made sense in my mind was that it had to be my husband, back early. But something felt wrong. Should I call out Frank's name and see if he answered? For some reason, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. So I gathered the courage to go downstairs. I crept down the stairs, careful not to make a sound. I reached the bottom, holding my breath. I took a few steps, and then I saw it. Outside the wide-open front door, there were footprints in the snow. Fresh ones, leading right up to the door. I felt my stomach tighten. Whoever was out there could be inside. A horrible thought crossed my mind. What if someone was just waiting for me to get closer so they could grab me and do God only knows? Was I not alone in the house anymore? That's when I noticed something else. In the front entrance, placed haphazardly on the shoe rack, were boots. Not mine, not my husband's. A pair of unfamiliar black boots. I could feel my hands trembling as I backed away, my mind racing. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. My phone was upstairs. Outside was freezing cold, and Frank had the car. The nearest neighbors lived over a mile away. What do I do? I gathered my courage and ran upstairs, grabbed my phone, locking myself in the bathroom, and I called 911. With a hushed voice, I told them everything. The footsteps, the shoes, the door, the footprints outside. They told me to stay on the line and wait for them to arrive. I didn't know how long I'd have to wait, but every second felt like an eternity. When the police finally arrived, they did a thorough search. And then, they found him. In the storage room, hiding behind some old boxes. An unremarkable middle-aged man with a distant stare, not frightened, alarmed, or angry. He just looked resigned to his present situation. I was told he was holding my husband's shotgun when he was found. But it wasn't loaded. Thank God, it wasn't loaded. The ammo was hidden upstairs. Thankfully, he hadn't found it. The man was arrested. But what really shook me was when I later found out who he was. He wasn't just any stranger. He had been in jail before, for manslaughter. He was a convicted killer who was out on parole, and he had been in my house, holding a weapon that could have ended my life. His motive for entering our home and taking Frank's rifle was never determined by the courts. Was he stealing the gun, intending to leave, but hid when he heard me coming? Or was he intent on harming me? Years have passed since the stranger took my husband's gun and hid in our house. And we have moved to a new house in another part of the country. But I just recently learned he has served his sentence and is out of jail. I imagine hearing things sometimes. Footsteps in the hall, the sound of a door creaking open, or I see objects like shoes or keys that appear to be moved, and I think about him. I wonder if he's here, watching, waiting. Is he going to finish what he started? Neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone. Life feels like it is moving in an expected rhythm. My family and I have moved into an older 2-story home. It is autumn, and the air has a crisp edge as the leaves change colors and winter teases its arrival. To my younger 13-year-old sister, and me, life seems busy yet comfortably predictable. Nothing unusual ever happens. At first, the disturbances are small. too small to warrant serious concern. A loaf of bread left on the counter vanishes by morning. My mom insists one of us must have eaten it in the middle of the night. My watch disappears too, only to be found days later in the backyard. Then comes my sister's iPhone. It mysteriously leaves the kitchen charger and ends up beneath a couch cushion. Even my dad's prized pearl-handled knife goes missing from his tackle box. Nothing too big, but enough to make us question how we are misplacing so many things. Then there's the mystery of the dirty dishes. My mom is the first to notice them, dishes left in the sink that no one recalls using. We ask each other about them, yet no one admits to leaving them there. It is happening daily. These strange happenings multiply, and so does the tension between us. We begin to turn on each other. Accusations fly like sharp arrows. My mom blames me, accusing me of playing tricks, and my dad seems to agree with her. My sister is convinced she is being watched, and I am starting to believe her. Every creak in the dark, every soft noise echoing down the hall, makes me stop and listen, sending chills through me. One night, while trying to sleep, I distinctly hear what sounds like muffled footsteps. I sit up in the dark, heart pounding, straining to see a shape in the faint glow from the hallway. I catch a glimpse of a figure slipping behind a door, vanishing before I can react. Petrified, I scream for my dad, waking everyone up. Dad, thankfully, takes me seriously and searches through the entire house. He finds nothing. The tension reaches a fever pitch one evening when a deafening crash jolts us awake. I bolt out of bed and hesitantly move downstairs. In the kitchen, shards of glass lie scattered on the floor, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through a broken window. A cold draft sweeps through the room. We exchange horrified looks. What the hell is going on? Desperation leads my father to call an exterminator, hoping that cats or raccoons are to blame. But when the man climbs into the attic on his inspection, a place we rarely, if ever, visit, the truth unfurls before us. Behind a false wall, with a small crawlspace entrance, lies a dirty stained mattress. On it are strewn food wrappers, a jumble of worn clothes, and shockingly, many of our missing belongings. My mom's jewelry, my sister's scarf, even my dad's old tools. There is also a rope ladder that could be used to climb down from the attic window. Someone is living in a secret room in our attic. We call the police. They comb through every inch of our home and search the neighborhood, but the intruder has vanished without a trace. No fingerprints, no footprints, nothing ties the identity of the mysterious occupant to our house. The investigation carries on for some time with zero progress. Every criminal or suspicious person questioned by the police is a dead end. No one is ever apprehended. As a family, we are left feeling violated. Someone has been secretly living with us and watching us. What did he see? Was he in our rooms? Did he lie on our beds? These thoughts invade our sanity. Our private lives were his obscene theater. We discuss moving, but Dad can't find a suitable house near his work and insists the ordeal is over, and to let it go. We install a home security system, change the locks, and even consider a guard dog. But Mom is allergic. My sister and I start counseling to process our trauma, and gradually, we begin moving on. 6 months pass, and life resumes its comfortable routine. My sister asks me to help her rearrange her room, a mundane task. We struggle with her bed, sliding it slowly across the hardwood floor. It creaks under the weight and friction, each groan of the old wood giving a high-pitched echo. The moment she leaves to fetch her cell phone she left downstairs, I notice something that makes my blood run cold. There, in the thin layer of dust on the floor where her bed had been, gleaming unnaturally in the dim light, lies my dad's pearl-handled knife, the same knife that vanished over a year ago. I stare, my stomach twisting into knots, unable to comprehend the impossible sight. Has the knife been there all along? Hidden in plain sight? Or was it deliberately placed there as some sinister message? Before I can even muster a thought, voices echo from downstairs. "I can't find my phone," calls my sister, her tone a mix of confusion and alarm. A moment later, my mom's voice floats up from the kitchen. "Why are there so many dirty dishes today?" My mom's words are laden with anxiety. In that instant, My chest tightens, and I am caught between the terror of the past and the uncertainty of the present. Has the thing that violated our lives returned? Is it coming this time with deadly intent? I remain paralyzed, staring at the gleam of the cold steel blade on the hardwood. Overhead, from the attic, I hear soft footsteps. Have you ever felt completely safe in your own home, only to have that sense of security shattered in one terrifying moment? I'm 17, and I live with my grandma in this old two-story house. What I'm about to tell you is a true story that still haunts me. It was around midnight. Grandma and I had just gone to bed, and everything was as quiet as it could be. Then suddenly, I heard soft, deliberate-sounding noises. At first, I figured it was the wind, but the sounds grew more insistent and louder. The house, usually my safe haven, transformed into something sinister that night. Every knock echoed through the empty halls, each one making my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was out there, watching. I lay in my room, heart pounding in my ears. But then, I began to hear more than just knocks. There were soft creaks, almost like whispers, floating down the hall. They weren't the comforting sounds of an old house settling. They were something else entirely. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I couldn't just lie there. I got out of bed and crept down the hall, every step deliberate, every creak of the wooden floor echoing my racing heartbeat. The corridor, once familiar, now felt like a passage into an unknown, dangerous world. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. A shadow moving slowly near the window. In that dim light, I could make out a figure. My stomach churned as the figure stepped into view. It was the intruder. "Don't try to be a hero," he said. I froze, paralyzed by fear. His voice was like ice, and those eyes behind the mask, they promised nothing but harm. "You should have stayed in your room," hissed the intruder. In that instant, every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I was caught between the urge to flee and the spell of terror that kept me rooted to the spot. Then, out of nowhere, our cat leapt in. The intruder lost his balance as he tripped over the cat's outstretched body and tumbled down the stairs with a sickening crash. I bolted toward the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, only to see him lying motionless at the bottom, a silent scream frozen on his face. I instinctively reached for my phone, determined to call 911. But before my fingers could dial, from upstairs, Grandma's urgent whisper cut through the tension. "Don't call the police, dear," she pleaded, pulling me back. "They won't help us. They only bring more trouble." There was a haunted desperation in her eyes that made me pause. I had always known she distrusted the police, but never had I seen it so raw. Reluctantly, I lowered my phone. My eyes darted back to the stairs, expecting to see the intruder's fallen body. But where he had been was now an empty, unnerving void. No trace of him remained. No blood, no limp form. Just the sound of my pounding heartbeat in the silent corridor. I stood there, trembling, trying to piece together what had just happened. Why would Grandma be so adamant about not involving the police? Had she witnessed something in her past? Something that made her fear their presence more than the terror lurking in our home? My mind churned with unanswered questions and dark possibilities. Did Grandma have a secret past that was catching up with her? The vanishing of the intruder left me with an unsettling dread. If he had somehow slipped away, would he come back? Was our home now a gateway for something far more sinister than a simple break-in? That night changed everything. The memory of the frightening intruder and his inexplicable disappearance, coupled with Grandma's cryptic warnings, continues to haunt me. And Grandma just tells me it's nothing, and don't worry. But I do worry.
Thank you for listening to my true stories. I bid you a fond adieu, my little sheep. Sleep well, if you can.